Well, welcome everyone. My name is Amol Nirgudkar. I'm the CEO of Patient Prism, and we're here back again in our Patient Prism makeshift studios at our houses, talking to Margaret McGuckin, who is one of our advisors and friends. And Margaret's going to talk to us today about lessons learned from the last recession. And Margaret's been, as you know, many of you know in the industry, she was the founding CEO of ClearChoice Dental Implant Centers. And they grew that from 0 to 31 locations with $131 million in revenue in 4 years, starting in 2008, which was when things hit the fan. And nobody thought that you could launch a business then. And she co-founded I3 Ignite, which is a consulting company that focuses on dental groups who are really trying to scale up their operations. And she helps them really develop a playbook for success. She's been a strong supporter of us at Patient Prism and as an advisor as well. And I'm really excited to welcome you, Margaret, to talk to us about some of these comeback strategies on how do you launch or relaunch your dental practice in the midst of what we seem as an upcoming recession based on what the COVID-19 crisis is. So welcome again.
Well, thank you for asking me to join you, Amol. You all have done such a phenomenal job in serving the industry during this really, really difficult time. And your education has been unparalleled. And I've loved these webinars. I listen to them all the time. So I'm thrilled to be a guest. Thanks.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Your advice means a lot to us. And thank you again, personally, for being that guiding light for us during this time. Everybody needs somebody during this time to kind of hold their hands. Some days are tougher than others, but we're all looking forward to coming back when everything opens up, and the industry is just waiting to get started. So let me start this webinar with the first question. You've been in the shoes of many DSO executives, and you are one for many long time. And what was it that enabled ClearChoice to come back from a very difficult economic downturn? Some of us thought it was the worst time that we would face in 2008. And what was that? What was it like at the time?
I feel like it was the good old days at this point in some respects, although at that point in time, we thought it was the end of the world. So I joined ClearChoice in April of 2007, and we were just coming out of pilot. And our new flagship location was going to be opened that fall. So I was brought in once the demand had been basically validated, right? So then, of course, we immediately started signing more docs. So we actually had so fast forward to 2008. And we actually had, 3 locations open all over the country. We had contracts with 5 more docs, several of whom had already sold their practices. And all of a sudden the bottom just fell out of everything. And we were cash flowing ClearChoice ourselves. So we were like, oh my God, what panic, fear, all the emotions we're feeling now of, none of us could believe that all the work that we put into this, all the time, all the love, all for the founders, all the money, could just disappear.
Right.
So it was a very, very difficult time emotionally for all of us. And so we really had to, as a team, and we had a very complementary team in terms of strengths. And I think that's one of the 3 hallmarks that enabled us to overcome. So we had an exceptional visionary doctor, Dr. Don Maloney, who you've met. And he was successful as an entrepreneur dentist long before ClearChoice, right? So he had a track record. Second, the CEO, Steve Boyd, and I both had very strong business backgrounds. And Steve was the one who called me. I'd worked for him for 4 years in another company. And he said, listen, you know how to scale better than anybody I know. Can you come be our chief operating officer and scale us? And so that combination of a visionary doc who was willing to partner in all respects with a business team was, I think, one of the things that enabled us to be successful. I think the other thing was second thing was our immediate response was emotional, as is everybody's. And so we typically, as human beings, have either a fight or a flight response to that danger.
Right.
And we said, we literally, and this is kind of the third, well, we literally said to each other, we are going to commit to each other. This was very intentional. That we are going to find our way out successfully to the other side of this situation. We don't care what it takes. We are willing to invest whatever we need to invest in order to make this happen. And that commitment got us through a lot of really tough days and frankly, tough years. The third thing is, we had so many areas where we had to get work done. We were literally just coming out of the pilot, and the pilot was in no way structured to be reality. The pilot was roughly a 2,000 square foot open bay ortho office.
Wow.
that Don owned. And so we could get it virtually for nothing for the pilot. And the staffing, the office setup, nothing, no processes. We just were truly validating demand. So to go from that and in 4 months into a 10,000 square foot flagship location was ginormous. So we literally had to narrow our focus, and narrowing our focus to what are we going to do to move the needle today and this week made such an impact on the business. And we ended up, calling it rapid iteration, because that's what we did. Every day we worked in the business and on the business to make it more successful. So this kind of narrowing your focus enabled us every day to impact the business. So I think those were the 3 things when I think back on it that really made a difference to us, that literally based on our commitment to each other.
So you basically knew that you had the right team in place with a visionary leader and people that could execute that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you got yourself geared into the mindset that we're going to fight. All right. We're not going to flight, right? We're going to fight this.
Yeah.
And we're going to make sure that and then we narrowed our focus to small things that we could accomplish on a daily basis that moves the needle forward.
Right.
And these are great insights even for today, right? As we think about, we've all come together in one place at our houses and thinking about what the future looks like, having that focus, singular focus that you're going to come out of this ahead of this, and assembling your team and getting them inspired and motivated to work harder every single day. Although we don't see a lot of progress made in one day, hopefully over a period of time, we would make progress. So great thoughts in this regard.
Good.
So my questions are very practical.
I love practical questions.
We've got all these offices closed down right now.
Yep.
And what are the top, let's say 3 or let's say 4 things? Let's say what top 4 things you would put on the roadmap right now that every practice needs to do immediately now sitting here?
So I'm going to quote Dr. Don Maloney for just a minute.
Okay.
Because I want to build on your statement, Amol, because he used to say many things, but 2 really have stuck with me over these many years since. One is we have to live in reality, and we would literally ask ourselves, are we living in reality? And how do we know? and the way we knew was data and feedback and input. And we can talk about that a little later. The second thing he would say is you can't, or we can't wish, hope, or pray our way out of this. We have to know what works, which is data and results and outcomes. And so here, I loved your statement, and I really wanted to say that was the way we thought about this. Was this has to be reality based? This can't be. We're going to hope we get financing. I mean, nobody would lend ClearChoice money. Nobody.
Correct.
Nobody would. I mean, private equity wasn't interested. We were like nobody. This was a totally new model. Very innovative, required a ton of creativity. Nope, no private equity company was interested. And it was the worst of the Great Recession. So this reality-based thinking really served us well. So kind of 4 things I think of then as maybe roadmap elements for moving out of this downturn. One is prepare your team. And your team is, I just can't even stress how important team is during this time, and especially your high performing team members. You have got to stay in touch with them, because if you don't, other docs, once things start to loosen up, other docs are going to try to poach your best talent. Who knows? They may be reaching out to them already, right? So you've got to make sure you stay in touch. The other thing is, you're going to need to sit down and really forecast what your needs for staffing will be in the weeks ahead. And while none of us know how this situation is going to unfold, you can do some scenarios. You can say, okay, here's my best case scenario. Here's my worst case scenario. Here's where I think the range of the middle is likely to be. And as a CPA, Amol, you have spent your life doing scenario planning. And that's really what's called for in terms of staffing, because it's likely to be a phased approach to getting back to full business, right? And clinical. And so understanding your team members, where they are, how they're doing emotionally, how they're doing financially, making sure you're reaching out to them, and then determining if you need to extend your operating hours. It may be into the evenings, it may be into Saturdays, it may be into Sunday afternoons. But if you want to generate revenue, which has got to be probably the number one objective of everybody coming back, as well as cutting your costs, those 2 things have to equal profitability. And if, let's say in this phased in approach, you can't have, I'm going to make this up, 6 people in your reception area, and if you can't do that, if you can't in essence stack patients up, and you have to restrict the number of patients who are in the practice at all, wherever they are, or the number of staff because of PPE that are in the office at any time, how are you going to really work those extended operating hours? And then we found really, really important. The team wants to be successful. And in order to know that they're successful, they have to have clear performance expectations. So if you don't have clear performance expectations for your team, every single function and member of your team, I would really encourage you to do that, and do it now when you've got the time. What do you expect of your front desk? Quantitatively data-driven. What do you expect of your DAs? Quantitatively data-driven. What do you expect of the whole practice? And how can you really encourage teamwork during this time to enable your team to succeed expectations? Because that's what's going to give them the lift beneath their wings, as we used to like to say, to really get liftoff.
So preparing your team basically is the first step, because obviously without your team, you can't survive. You can't operate your business.
Right.
So getting forecasting done, looking at hours, setting up performance expectations and KPIs now and in the future is a good idea. So that's a great first step is get your team prepared.
So the second is build out your schedule now. And I mean, this is hard, but if you don't prioritize types of treatments, then your revenue will suffer, because otherwise, you could have a ton of people just calling to say, I want hygiene appointments, and your schedule could get filled up with hygiene, not a bad thing. But let's say that you have treatments pending that are much higher value than that. Make sure that you're creating blocks of time in your schedule for those high priority treatments, because they're higher revenue treatments.
Right.
Create literally blocks on your calendar for scheduling those, and don't release those blocks until 48 hours prior to that block occurring. Make sure that people who are in treatment get calls out from you, and they get scheduled, even if it's tentatively, into one of those blocks as soon as possible. And then go back through your charts. Have your team, as they're coming back, go back through charts to find patients who are, who didn't accept that treatment plan, but who really need treatment, and reach out to them and get them scheduled. Really, really critical to do. And just, and I just want to kind of add the third thing here really quickly, because it feeds into this high value cases piece, Amol. So the third thing is to think about patient financing now. So why? Well, because people are going to have a lot lower credit scores
Right.
coming out of this than they had going in. Care credit is great, but if you only have one patient financing company, you're going to be having problems getting high value cases financed. And a lot of people aren't going to have the cash. And you don't want them going to other docs who do have other financing plans that are that work more at the lower end of the market. Is anybody going to have a patient financing plan for somebody with a 640 credit score? No,
Right.
They are not.
Right.
But you can't. Not everybody's going to have a 720 either. So you need to find at least one other provider in that middle range to handle your high value cases and patients. The other thing, consider membership plans, and consider even, doing a little financing yourselves. There's great patient financing companies out there. Call them now and get this stuff set up.
Okay. So we've got preparing the team. You got to build your schedule, and I've said this all along. I'm like, if you mess that up, you're gonna have all these unhappy customers who are wanting to come in, and you can't get them in, and you're gonna fill up all the hygiene appointments, and now you can't get any treatment done, which is great. I think everybody needs it, but from an expanded hour standpoint and an availability standpoint, you could create a bigger mess because you can't fit the patients in.
Exactly. And they're going to be unhappy.
Right.
Which gets us to marketing. So can I tell you a couple stories? Two stories from me. One is with my dentist, and I had a root canal
Right.
in mid-February.
Oh, okay.
And I still have my temporary crown on it, right? It's like several months later. And it's tooth 31, which is, posterior, your last molar. So I am, there's a lot of force applied to that tooth. So it's kind of at risk at this point. So I had to call my dentist's office to say, when do you think, tentatively even, you could get me in?
Sure.
I had to call them.
Right.
They didn't call me. And I'm like, by the way, I asked to talk to the practice manager and said, you need to know, I as a patient am at risk now, because other docs are going to start marketing. And this is the fourth point. They're going to start marketing. Why? Because they know that there's going to be opportunities out there like I just described. And you do not want to lose patients to another practice, especially these high value patients. So start marketing now is number one. Just another example, a friend, I was talking on the phone with a friend, and she happened to say, hey, I'm kind of thinking about maybe I don't know, should I change dentists? And I'm like, well, what's bringing this up? And she said, well, she works Monday through Friday. Her only day off, Monday through Thursday, her only day off is Friday. And she said, my doc doesn't work Fridays.
Sure.
And I said, well, he or she is likely to have extended hours after they reopen. So you should be able to get in. And who knows, they may continue those extended hours. They may
Sure.
find them productive. And she said, I just really think that, boy, if I get something from another dentist, some marketing piece, I think I'm going to try them. I'm like, oh, case in point, number two, because I frankly I've had second thoughts about this new dentist. I was with the same dentist for 14 years. He sold his practice, which we all know is an opportunity for patients to shop around. I did shop around. I'm in a very large, well-regarded practice, but if they can't get this right, I'm going to switch, and I'm keeping my eyes open for another dentist. So anyway, start marketing. Do things like social media, right? Make sure that you're posting when you're going to be reopening, partially or fully make sure that if you are going to have special offers, and I would recommend having special offers. For example, one that tends to work really well is to say, if you start treatment by the end of this month, or, let's say it's the end of the month, by the end of next month, then we'll give you a 15% discount, 10% discount, whatever it is. Sure. Discounts for paying cash or by credit card. But if you're going to extend some offers, start promoting them now, right? So that you don't run this risk of losing patients. And then I think it'd be so cool to actually see social posts where you can see the team reopening that dental office, because I'd love to see Jamie, who's at the front desk, who I've known for 15 years. I'd love to see her like saying hi, getting her desk set back up again. Going around and talking to other team members and interviewing them. I want to see my relationship in person, even though I can't be there in person with them yet. I want to know they're preparing and they're getting ready for us as patients. So just some thoughts around marketing.
And what do you think about, obviously we need to communicate better now with our patients more than ever before, because the number one thing on their mind is I am scared of going to the doctor, dentist, because of what could be exposed. So do you think marketing around your safety and your PPE and your infection control procedures is also critical?
I do. And I actually was talking with somebody recently, with a couple of docs recently, who said, so like, what level of assurance do I need to provide patients and prospective new patients regarding their safety? And I said, everybody needs to kind of come up with language that fits them, but something that says there's nothing more important to us than your safety. And we will not put anybody, we will not, intentionally, consciously put anybody at risk. We have the required PPE. And by the way, we are not putting our team members at risk either. But there's nothing more important to us than your health and your safety. And we have everything in place that is required, and we're ready to, make sure you get the finest dental care available in a safe environment.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think assuring the patients that this is safe, because no matter what deals you give them, right, if they don't feel safe, they're not going to show up.
They're not going to show up. In fact, I mean, this really kills me, but like, I have a hair appointment on May 1st. My God, do I go or not? And it's just one guy. He's in his own building. Sure. His husband actually happens to be an anesthesiologist. So he is very, very conscious of PPE. And he just sent out something saying, okay, as of this point, I think we'll be open. The first day will be Friday, May 1st. just know that if you want to wear your mask, I'll find a way to work around it. I will be wearing a mask.
Nice.
So even things like the hair salons, for heaven's sakes, are starting to talk about health and safety. And I think it just makes sense for docs to be talking about it as well.
Let me ask you. We've had many conversations over the years, and what I am really interested in right now, I think most people are, is moving that needle, right? And you talk about the importance of moving the needle slowly but surely every single day. How did you do that? Like literally, what did you guys do at ClearChoice to move that needle every day?
So we've done what I like to call triage, which is we did the cost cutting, and we looked very deeply at our model to say, how can we restructure the management services team? How can we restructure our locations so that we are doing the most effective work at the least cost, right? So we did triage in terms of just cutting whatever costs we could, getting better rates from suppliers, all those types of things. And then we said, is our model right from a cost revenue equation standpoint?
Right.
And after doing that analysis, of course, what we discovered is we can only cut costs, even strategically, so far. And then it's got to be about revenue. We couldn't cut costs to get out of the Great Recession. And I think that's true today. Can costs be cut? Yes. Are people paying enough attention to increasing revenue? No. So we really had one goal, we decided, and that was to increase our revenue and to increase it significantly. And so our number one question that we asked each other every single week, every Friday morning, was, what do we need to do this week to be more successful at generating more revenue? And every week we set a quantitative target. So it might be let's talk conversion rate. And ClearChoice had patient education consultants. So let's say we would set the target of increasing by even 1% our conversion rate over our locations.
Right.
The team would meet every Friday morning. Many of us would be out in our locations Monday through Friday, and we were opening new locations. So, and I opened and managed our locations. So I was out a lot, like 4 days a week. So we'd meet every Friday morning, and we'd ask each other the question, what's the most impactful thing we can do next week in terms of increasing revenues? We'd set that specific goal, that specific target, and then we'd say, okay, what's the one thing we can do as a team to move that needle to that 1%? And we would figure out what that was. Those meetings were not short. I mean, they were about, like 2.5, 3 hours long, 2-3 hours long. Because everything got fully discussed. Everybody brought ideas to the table. We looked at data together, and we can talk a little bit more about that if you want to later. But we came out of there with a very, very clear, narrow, focused way to say, we are next Friday going to know if we had an impact on revenue last week.
Sure.
And so we could measure our own progress. So we'd finish our meetings usually at about 11, and we would communicate everything out to the locations in kind of a playbook approach so that we'd know that implementation would be predictable. And then we would start gathering input as a team starting Monday afternoon to say, okay, so like how well have we done so far this week? And then Friday, it'd be like, wash, rinse, repeat. And these seem so incremental, right? We didn't set like, let's increase revenue by 20%. No, because we didn't know if that was reality or not, but we knew with great confidence that we could increase it by 1% or 3 or 5%. And that we knew that if we did that every week over the course of a year, Like we weren't hoping we'd be successful. We knew we were going to be successful.
It's interesting because we could apply the same logic today, and if you're a dental office, we could say, here's our options. We have no new patients coming in. We're open for emergencies. We have just implemented this brand new teledentistry platform, and our goal for next week to increase revenue is to have $4,000 or $5,000 of new revenue, or $2,000 of revenue by next Friday, by engaging with existing and new customers through our teledentistry platform. And could that be one of the...
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that issue up, because teledentistry is the bomb right now. I mean, it really is. And it's a way to, now that it's being reimbursed,
right.
Right? It's a way to make sure that you're able to increase your volume without increasing the number of people physically in your location, whether those people are, team members or their patients. Right. And I think it is a killer way to acquire new patients, especially younger patients.
Absolutely. Everybody's right now in that mode of trying to figure out a way to make it easier. And teledentistry really makes it easier. Although you can't do any dentistry on a video, at least you can get them in a process flow to optimize how patients come into your door. And this could be even applicable after this crisis is over.
I think it's especially applicable after the crisis is over. I mean, let's talk about the big clear aligner companies who have valuations, through the roof.
Right.
They have been doing this now for years.
Right.
Right. There's no reason that we can't be doing these and do it in a way that's sustainable over time and that grows over time. I think teledentistry is here. It's here to stay. It's critical to developing relationships with people. And when you develop relationships with people, when you convert a stranger to a friend, which you can totally do in teledentistry, right, you have that new patient. They're going to stop shopping around. Sorry.
Right, no problem. In terms of, you talk a lot about getting the team engaged and getting team input and right now is a great time for us to connect with our teams. If we're doctors, whoever it is, I do this every day. We have technology like Zoom or GoToMeeting where we can connect with our teams. How did you guys gather all the team input? Because everybody has ideas on what we can do to improve that. And what was the process of gathering all the input and then putting that into some action items?
So foundational to the thinking is we had a playbook. We used a playbook approach, right? Okay. And I happened to develop that approach and write the playbook for the first 3.5 years. So we had a structured way every Friday to do this communication and to lay out what we wanted done differently and incorporate that into this playbook approach, which made it much, much faster to execute new things, right? Okay, so I was out, really all of our team was out in locations 4 days a week. So we were there and that was part of the culture, was we are here to remove barriers for you. We're here to, help support your work. We're here to make things better for you. So we really want your honesty and we want your ideas. And so we did, every week, every day, I was often in 3 different locations in different parts of the country every week. So we were all out on the front lines. We were all gathering input around what's working, what's not working, and how can we do things better that impact our target this week. And people were, because we had a culture that encouraged this, people were extremely forthcoming in saying, and I would call, if I wasn't in locations, I'd call docs we were small enough, I could call them every day, all of our docs. We had like eight locations probably at that point by the end of 2008, call all docs every day and ask them to rate my team and I on how we were doing in supporting them and their teams. Literally, we asked for an A through an F.
Wow.
And if they gave us, a D, we'd say, what can we do to improve that? What are we doing that's not working? So input was just part of who we were as a culture. And that became really important to us. The other thing is data. We did have data that we could look at every single day, and we did every single day. And in that dashboard, especially the daily dashboard, we were looking at things like, why is the Phoenix location doing well with this 1% improvement we're trying to get, and Chicago isn't, just as an example.
Right.
Because it's in that variance that your ability to lift the performance of the whole company is found. Because you've got to lift your low performers and you've got to continuously improve your high performers. And you've got to reduce the variance between the two. So that's really how we looked at data. One of the biggest issues when you've got a multi-location company,
right,
DSO or group practice or whatever, is knowing whether people are really compliant, like if the team is compliant with the changes you're making. So we also gathered input about that, and we got to very quickly to the point where as we were talking, for example, and I'd call patient education consultants in every location every week. I'd call front desk, I'd call practice managers as well as the docs. I talked to a DA, I talked to our hygienist and say, so how is doing the tour of the center, let's say this is what we changed. We're going to try doing the tour of the center instead of at the beginning of the consult. We're going to try doing it at the end as part of the wrap up. So
right.
How's that working for you?
Right.
And they would say things like, that's all they had to say. And I would know that they weren't doing the tour at the end. And I'd say, so it sounds like maybe you aren't doing the tour at the end. There's no punishment for this. I just need to know why you're not. I need to know what I could do to help give you more confidence that by doing this little test, it's not going to hurt your compensation. Sure. And then I want to know, kind of what you think in general about this approach. So just asking the really tough questions of yourself and giving your team, no matter how many, whether you're the COO or the front desk person, giving each other permission to ask and answer the really tough questions with honesty and with good intent. It was so critical to our ability to make that continuous improvement happen every week.
Obviously, when you're running a group practice or a DSO with multiple locations, managing becomes tough, and because you can't possibly touch every single person every single day, although you would like to, in the executive side, and you just talked about this daily dashboard, and talk to our audience a little bit about how much of this you use. This is right now a new trend in the last few years of using dashboards and data, but you guys did that really effectively early on to kind of give you a grip on the business and be able to identify problems very quickly with your rapid iteration every Friday.
It starts at the top, right? So if we as an executive group didn't look at that data every day and then call to get input at each of our locations related to what we saw that was going well and why, and what wasn't going well and why, it never would have had any traction at all. And I like to ask the question of, so do you really want the data? And seriously, because you need to then use the data, and you use that data as the foundation, and then you go get overlay input on that, subjective input from people. So are you really going to use it that way? Are you committed every day to figuring out why this number moved in this location and why it didn't in another location? Or do you just want a pretty business intelligence tool and a pretty dashboard? Because you know what? We used Excel spreadsheets for like 3.5 years before we moved to SharePoint. Now, we knew we were going to install a BI program. We just didn't have the money to do it, right? So all of our spreadsheets and all of our financial data, which at that time was Great Plains, and all of our practice management data, we folded into these spreadsheet reports so that every day we could see a combined look. So we could forecast by location based on the current trends in that location. What was the revenue and the profit going to be at the end of the month? Every day I could see that. And how was it shifting day to day? And all of us could see it. And we could see things like, why weren't we filling operatories in Dallas? Did we need more marketing investment? Was our consult rate low? What was going on there? So this notion of having a dashboard and then being able to have this set of what I like to call diagnostic data, which can help you diagnose why your dashboard numbers are looking good or they're not. And then using that every single day. Every day I'd be calling out to say, hey, so things went really well yesterday in this area. Tell me about it.
Right. I mean, this is what you did, right? You created a culture of data.
Yes.
And data-driven decision-making. And that's what appeals to me, has been appealed to me the most, is that dentists today have a unique opportunity to look inside their business and implement this culture of data-driven decision-making. And if we can do that, I think we could come out of this crisis a lot sooner. As you guys basically are the playbook for launching a business in the midst of the worst crisis, and using data and using this rapid iteration and narrow focus to really drive incremental change, which eventually became a big change.
Yep.
And I think these are really good pointers for people who are in the same spot today. Whether you are a DSO, a single doc, or a software company like me, these principles are evergreen, no matter what. I really appreciate you. We've worked out actually a ebook based on Margaret's suggestions, which we're going to make it available for people to download, and which will have some contact information regarding Margaret, and we're going to put that on the screen here. She is really helping right now group practices and DSOs in really figuring out what your comeback strategy is going to be, and contact her through her website, which is i3ignite.com. And she's always open to helping as many folks as possible during this time, because if you have a great strategy, in my view, and Margaret, you've helped us with this as well, is you can literally get back to business hopefully by the end of the year, and hopefully forget about this short period that really caused us quite a bit of anxiety. But I think there's some opportunity that can come out of this as well.
I think we can all hardly wait until this is in our rear view mirror. But as you said, now is really the time to set up and to work the principles we're talking about now, because this is going to create long-term success, and it's going to put this current situation in your rear view mirror a lot faster. So thank you for your time, and I so enjoyed being a part of what you all are doing at Patient Prism. It's such important work. I encourage all practices to use Patient Prism. It makes a huge impact on revenue. So sign up today if you haven't already.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that recommendation as well. We appreciate it. We're very, very excited about communicating the message of that, hey, we need to look at data, we need to measure it, and communication becomes even super more important right now, now that we're going back up, because patients need to feel safe and comfortable going to the doctor. With that in mind, go ahead, sorry.
I'm just going to say, and you want to know that your front desk is saying the right things.
Absolutely.
Or your contact center is saying the right things, because if they're not, that can put you in jeopardy of losing that potential new patient.
Because it's not going to be business as usual, right? We're going to have there's a new normal that's coming, and we'll have to adapt to that new normal based on that. So on that note, thank you again for coming on. We'll have you more as we launch more comeback strategies within the dental space. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Wonderful presentation. Thanks.
Take care. Stay healthy. Be safe.